You're disowned. Don't ever contact us again, my dad typed in the family WhatsApp group. Messages flooded in. Finally, my brother added. Then a file appeared, a bank statement with my name on it. My name is Hannah Brooks. I'm 33 years old and I work as a remote customer support manager. I've always been the quiet one in my family, the one who keeps things running but never gets noticed. My brother is the favorite, the one they always praised, always trusted, always defended. I moved out early, built my life slowly, saving carefully while they assumed I was struggling. Whenever I tried to speak about money issues in the family, I was shut down or ignored. They said I didn't understand real responsibility. I stopped arguing and just focused on my own life. I wasn't glamorous or flashy, but I had something they didn't expect. I kept records, and I paid attention. If you've ever been ignored or pushed aside by your own family, you understand how that feels. Subscribe if this resonates with you. Share your story in the comments. Click hype or like if you've ever been underestimated. Let's get into it. It started with a WhatsApp notification. The family group, which had been quiet for weeks, suddenly exploded. Someone had noticed money missing from our shared property fund, and the messages were coming fast and angry. I read through the thread carefully and asked simple questions. Where did the transfers go? What were the exact dates? The numbers didn't add up to me, and I said so. My brother's response came within seconds. You don't even understand what you're reading. I felt the sting of that, but I kept going. I asked again. Then my father stepped in. Stop interfering. You're already out of this family. A pause, then another message. You're disowned. The relatives in the group went quiet. Some reacted with a thumbs up on my father's message. I was removed from two smaller family groups within minutes, cut off digitally before I could even process what was happening. Then, while I sat there alone, a file was posted in the main group, a bank statement. My name was printed clearly at the top. The accusations started before I could even open the document properly. Shock rippled through the group. Everyone assumed they knew exactly what they were looking at, but I knew something they didn't. I was being set up. The calls started almost immediately. Family members I hadn't spoken to in months were suddenly very interested in reaching me. Not to ask if I was okay, to accuse me. How could you take from the family fund? One aunt said. Her voice was tight, certain. My brother had already been busy. He'd built a neat, convincing story. Hannah needed money. Hannah had access. Hannah must have done it. I was excluded from every conversation about the property sale that followed. No one asked for my input. No one sent me documents. I found out about meetings after they had already happened. Then came the gathering. I showed up because I refused to let them decide my fate without my face in the room. The moment I walked in, I felt it. The silence had a texture to it, thick and deliberate. My brother didn't waste any time. She always had issues with money, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, with a small smile that made my stomach turn. People looked away from me, not in sympathy, in judgment. Then my father pulled me aside and handed me a stack of papers. He wanted me to sign away my legal rights to the family property. Sign this and we'll forget everything, he said. His tone was almost kind, which was somehow worse. I looked at the documents carefully. Something was off. The dates were inconsistent. Certain clauses referenced accounts I'd never controlled. I didn't sign. I went home and started digging instead. What they didn't know was that I had already backed up every transaction from that account. I'm careful with financial records. I always have been. Even for accounts I barely used, I kept copies of statements, alerts, and logs. Months before any of this happened, I had noticed irregular transfers, small at first, then larger. I didn't react. I watched. The timestamps on those transactions didn't match any activity I had done. The login locations were cities I had never visited. I started building a timeline quietly, while they were busy celebrating what they thought was a clean setup. Every transfer, every login, every message. I organized it all. I stayed silent in the group while the accusations kept coming. I let them believe I had nothing. I let my brother feel comfortable. Because I understood one thing clearly. Timing was everything, and mine wasn't right yet. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year, a man named Derek who used to work for my family's business. He'd been let go after raising concerns about irregular accounting. He wasn't surprised to hear from me, and he wasn't surprised by what I described. He'd seen it before. He shared internal emails that showed my brother had held direct control over account permissions during the exact period in question. He walked me through how access levels had been quietly shifted, how someone with the right credentials could make transactions appear to come from a different user entirely. Derek had his own documentation. He gave me copies of everything. Meanwhile, the family grew louder and more confident. My brother told relatives I wouldn't fight back. My father moved forward with plans for the final property transfer. A formal meeting was scheduled at a lawyer's office to close everything out. I said nothing publicly. I confirmed I would attend, and I kept building. The lawyer's office smelled like printer ink and air conditioning, the kind of room where decisions get made and lives get changed. Everyone was already seated when I arrived. My brother sat at one end of the table, relaxed, one hand resting flat on a stack of documents. He looked like someone who had already won. The lawyer walked through the paperwork. My brother presented his version of the financial situation with smooth confidence. "She already admitted it by staying silent," he said at one point, glancing at me. The lawyer then turned to me and asked one final time if I was ready to sign. I said, "Before I sign anything, you need to see this." I placed my compiled report on the table. The lawyer picked it up and began reading. The room was very quiet. Login records pulled from the account's security history showed access from IP addresses that traced directly to my brother's registered devices, not mine. The transaction timestamps matched activity on his accounts, not my own. The emails Derek had provided showed deliberate changes to access permissions. The lawyer's expression shifted as he read. My brother leaned forward. "This is all fabricated." The lawyer didn't look up. "These records are verified," he said, his voice flat and final. My father hadn't spoken in several minutes. I watched the certainty drain from my brother's face in real time. The lawyer set the papers down and stated clearly that I bore no responsibility for the transfers and that there were serious legal concerns about fraud that would need to be addressed separately. Nobody in that room looked comfortable anymore. The people who had been so sure, so loud, so ready to erase me, suddenly had nothing to say. I didn't sign a single page that day. I told the lawyer I would not be making any decisions about family property without independent legal representation, and I meant it. In the weeks that followed, I separated myself completely from every shared financial structure I had been part of. I opened my own accounts, secured what was mine, and made sure nothing was accessible to anyone without my explicit authorization. My father called once. He tried to explain, but there was nothing left to explain. Trust, once it breaks that way, doesn't repair with a phone call. My brother faced consequences. Not immediately, not dramatically, but they came. The kind that follow quietly behind a person once the truth is sitting on a table in a lawyer's office. I stopped fighting for space in a family that had already decided where I belonged. I stopped trying to make people understand who I was when they had already chosen to believe the worst. They said I was the problem, but I was the only one paying attention. If your family ever blamed you for something you didn't do or tried to push you out, you know exactly how that feels. Share your story in the comments. Subscribe to connect with people who've been wrongly accused. You are not alone in this. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, especially when the people opposing you are the ones who were supposed to be in your corner. If you've been through something like this, subscribe and become part of this community. Let me know this story helped by clicking hype, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.